on first down. They hand off to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, I-N-D-Y. And again, it's picked off. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with a second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac. Kenny Moore gets to Deshaun Watson. That's a sack for Kenny Moore. Kenny has a pick and now a sack in the game.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice podcast. I am your host, Cody Felger. Joining us, special guest. He's director of scouting at NFL Draft Bible. He's also a contributor to a couple different draft sites, as well as a co-host on Raw Network, Mr. Ryan Roberts. Ryan, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me on, and hope everything's doing well on your part of the country.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been kind of nice here in Indiana. They started to sort of open a few things up, and I know they're gradually going. And so things are hopefully getting back to normal by the summer. But certainly has been kind of a crazy last few months, especially in the NFL world. Obviously having to do the virtual draft was just completely different for everybody, but it seemed like it worked out well. And the Colts made some selections in the NFL draft. Obviously, they didn't have a first-round pick this year, but they had a lot of different picks. Traded down, got some more picks. And the Colts in total, I believe, had 9 picks. And kind of wanted to look today, and I know you did a lot of scouting on probably a lot of these players that the Colts selected. Kind of want to get your take, Ryan, on what you think some of these guys that the Colts drafted on offense. And again, we talked off air. We'll have to look at the defense at another date. But looking here specifically at the offense, because this really was, especially early on, a very offensive-centric draft for the Colts. So we can start here with the Colts' first selection in this draft in the second round, 34th overall. They select wide receiver Michael Pittman out of USC. He's a big body receiver. He's 6'4", about 215 pounds. Something that the Colts have not had in a body type for a long time, it seems like. From your perspective here, Ryan, what do you think a guy like Michael Pittman in year one can bring to this Colts offense? How can he help them potentially reach new levels and presumably get better than they were in 2019?
Well, I think for the first part of that is that Michael Pittman is a very polished player. You can argue that maybe the upside isn't as extreme as some of the other wide receivers in the 2020 class, but what you have here is matching of different styles. Hopefully a healthy T.Y. Hilton moving forward, vertical threat. You have last year they drafted Paris Campbell, who's kind of the short yak guy who can do a lot of things, inside, outside, a little bit of versatility. And then you mesh that with the big body of Michael Pittman, which, as you said, is something that they haven't had in a while now. So you're able to mesh kind of those different talents. And the real selling point for me is you now have different body types, you have different skill sets, and together they're able to really create what is going to be a huge upgraded wide receiver core as long as T.Y. can stay healthy. Because now you could just throw Michael Pittman into the boundary as the true X receiver. He's the big body pass catcher, maybe some back shoulder work, do all those different types of things. I really love the pick just for the meshing of styles, and he brings something that you did not have before the draft, obviously.
The Colts stayed in the second round to pick number 41. Selected running back Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin. Now, Ryan, this is had over 2,000 yards rushing in back-to-back years, and last year had over 20 rushing touchdowns. I think for me it was a little bit of a surprise, especially because, the Colts had the 7th best rushing attack last year in the league. I kind of felt a little bit like a luxury pick to me. What are your thoughts here on the Colts selecting Jonathan Taylor to be their, ideally their feature back for the near future?
Yeah, it was a very surprising pick for me too, just because I'm a fan of Marlon Mack and what he's been able to do. I know he's had some durability concerns, whether he's, I guess, a full-time ball carrier, but it's such a departmentalized NFL now. I feel like you can mesh different talents at the running back position. You could be fine, but obviously, if you're gonna you swing for the fences here at the running back position. Jonathan Taylor quite literally is the home run guy that you might want to take a look at. He grew up about 30 minutes south of me. I'm in New Jersey. He's a Salem County kid, and he got a look at him when he was running track when I was coaching, and he at 210 pounds, ran like a 10-400 meter. He runs 4.39 at 220 plus pounds. He's a really special athlete potentially. So while I think it was an odd pick, pairing him with Marlon Mack, doing some different things, I feel like the offensive line is now set up. You big Quentin Nelson and all those guys, they're kind of chomping at the bit now to have who was for 3 years probably the best running back in college football history for a 3-year span. So I think the Colts fans should be really excited about it. Odd pick, but hey, man, I'm not going to question anything that they're doing over right now in Indianapolis. They've built a great roster. Frank Reich, I'm a huge fan of. So I'm going to just kind of sit back and watch Jonathan Taylor develop into the running back that everyone probably imagines he can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the Colts went in the 4th round, 3rd round. They took a defensive player. 4th round, pick 122. They select potentially, and I say potentially because Chris Ballard has harped to the media, let's not crown this guy as the Messiah, right? The next coming of Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, what have you. But they select a quarterback here. They select Jacob Eason, quarterback out of Washington. Guy who has a really big arm. I know there's a lot of potential there. Some people were even mocking him in the 2nd round. The Colts get him here. He falls all the way to the 4th round. What are your thoughts here on potentially Jacob Eason, maybe being the Colts starter down the road, maybe, being just the backup, whatever happens. Overall, what are your thoughts on Jacob Eason?
I was really scared that Jacob Eason was going to be overdrafted to be that late 1st round, early 2nd round quarterback. I'm happy with this destination just because I feel like early day 3, there's not going to be much of an emphasis on him playing early, and he shouldn't be playing early. He's only played really 1 full year of college football. He played a lot as a freshman at Georgia, but everything was so dumbed down, and that offense did not do him justice at all. So I'm really looking at a 1-year sample size at Washington. The kid has everything you would want in a quarterback, honestly. He's got the size, the arm strength. He makes some of the throws that just kind of make you take a second glance, rewind the film for a second. And to be in this situation, learning from Frank Reich, and again, with a really nice, nucleus of young players on that roster developing here and the ability to learn from Phillip Rivers from a year, I feel like this is I was a fan of him potentially going to Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians and sitting behind Brady. I feel like this is about as good as you can get. These were like the top 2 fits that I felt like for Jacob Eason, it could be optimal for him moving forward. I feel like with Frank Reich in this situation, sit back, watch. I think that he can eventually develop into that starter if everything kind of works well for him moving forward.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, why do you think he fell all the way where he did to the 4th round? You said some people, you thought he could potentially be drafted late 1st round, maybe even, 2nd round. Why do you think he fell this far? What do you think is some of the reasoning behind that?
It's really curious, honestly, because usually the big arms, raw guys usually move up in the draft a little bit. They're kind of overdrafted. I think it's just the changing of how the game is evolving a little bit. Everything so out of script at the quarterback play. You have to be able to break the pocket and do things when structure breaks down. That's not Jacob Eason's game. I feel like that's why you saw Jalen Hurts go in the 2nd round. I think that Jacob Eason is kind of what you marveled at a couple years ago, but the game's changing a little bit. So I feel like he's just kind of becoming an old fad, but in the right system, right situation, I still think that could be a successful piece moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And then the Colts in the 5th round, they address the offense again. They address their offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in football. But they select a local product, offensive lineman Danny Pinter out of Ball State. He played tackle at Ball State, but the Colts kind of see him potentially as an interior guard center type player. What are your thoughts here on the Colts getting a guy like Pinter here in the 5th?
Yeah, so I saw a lot of Danny Pinter just because at NFLPA, we're kind of involved with the NFLPA Bowl at NFL Draft Bible. Rick Saratella is one of the scouts over there, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Danny, interview him before the draft, during the process and everything. And he's the guy that, like you said, he played right tackle at Ball State. Obviously, he's not the tallest guy in the world. He doesn't have the longest arm. He's right around 6'4". He's got, sub 33-inch arms. But what he is he's a really special athlete potentially. I heard, at the NFLPA game, he was turning heads all week. I think he may have been the first one taken for the NFLPA Bowl, first or second or third, one of those kind of players. He was definitely high up there. So he's a highly talented player, definitely fits better inside. I wouldn't throw out even a center position being his final destination. No, obviously you guys have Ryan Kelly over there, but I think he's a guy that immediately can back up 3 spots and then see how he continues to develop.
Mm-hmm. And some people have even said he could challenge day one at that right guard position with Mark Glowinski, who's been the starter for the last few years, but is the obvious weak link on that offensive line. Do you see him potentially being a guy that could threaten Glowinski here and even in year one?
Yeah, I mean, so he's definitely more talented than Glowinski if you're just looking at from an athletic trait perspective. It's funny, when I was actually down in Indianapolis and we were watching, we had a suite rented out, and I actually got to sit down with Mark Glowinski for a few minutes because he's an Indianapolis guy, so he was down there. But I feel like Glowinski, obviously is the weaker link of the group, like you said, absolutely. So, I mean, could he potentially take the job down the road? I would definitely say so. I don't think that he's going to be ready year one, but for the future, I think this guy has a lot of tools that he can definitely build off of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the last offensive pick that the Colts made was in the 6th round. They actually had a slew of picks, 3 in a row at 211, 212, and 213. And at 212, they take wide receiver Desmond Patman out of Washington State, a big body wide receiver similar to Michael Pittman, but a little bit bigger than Pittman. What do you think? This guy has huge hands. He has over 10-inch hands. Just a big guy. What are your thoughts here on Desmond Patman and what he could potentially do in year one and even down the road a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so you already said it early in the segment is that they've not had size at the position in some time now. So they obviously it was the point of emphasis to not only get better at the position, but to get larger at the position. And Patman's a guy that nothing about him is going to really jump off the screen besides his size. He does a lot of stuff in the back shoulder game, above the rim, contested catch situation. He does some nice stuff. He's not a great athlete. He's not going to, really threaten you vertically too much. He's going to stack and he's going to be able to win at the catch point, which, is a valuable commodity. I think that for him, though, in the near future, it's going to depend on what he's able to do on special teams because he's a big, nice-looking athlete. He's got to be able to contribute, whether it's on kickoff, kick return, whatever it might be. He's got to kind of do that stuff to solidify his role because it's going to be a tough climb for him to make the roster. But I feel like it's a pretty safe projection to think that he could potentially be a 4th to 5th wide receiver with his size variance and his ability potentially to win in the red zone.
Yeah, and you mentioned the red zone. Do you see him more of just a red zone type player? I mean, the Colts have not had that for so long, especially at their wide receiver position. Do you see him in developing into a real dangerous red zone threat potentially if he can kind of put it all together?
Yeah, I feel like early on even he could definitely provide reps there because I know, Eric Ebron was a nice guy for you guys a couple years ago as far as the red zone role. I think he had like double-digit touchdowns 2-3 years ago, whenever that breakout year was. But obviously him being gone now, big bodies near the end zone is always going to be an attractive thing. So if you could sell me on him as far as Patman being a special teamer and being a guy that contributes down near the red zone, I think that that's definitely his best path, and I could definitely buy into that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for just your insight a little bit, looking into some of these Colts picks. It'll certainly be interesting to see which guys, kind of do what expected, which guys exceed expectations. It'll be a lot of fun, but the Colts certainly added a lot to their skill positions in this draft. So it'd be interesting to see, down the road, how are these guys contributing, and can some guys like Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor and maybe even Danny Pinter, contribute day one. So before I let you go here, where can some folks find kind of your work and what you do with the draft and the scouting world?
Yeah. So, Scout Brawl, we're at Draft Brawl on Twitter. We do a weekly show. It drops every Wednesday. If you guys want to take a look at some of the draft news, we're doing our draft grades by position work. And, all the stuff you want to check there. If you want to just check out my written work and different things, director of scouting over at NFL Draft Bible. We, do a lot of things out there, have some seminars, webinars with some industry individuals coming up. That's going to be really exciting. And then freelance stuff, Pro Football Ready. I also do the draft. The Dynasty Draft Room. Sorry, it's a little bit of a tongue twister. But if you want anything on there, follow me, Rise and Draft on Twitter, and then we can check out some of the content. I hope everyone enjoys that content, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Ryan, again. We appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely, Cody. Anytime, man. I appreciate it. You guys have a really good coach, a really good GM, building a great roster. So I think Colt fans have a lot of things to really excited about coming forward.
Yeah, we are definitely excited as well. All right, take care, man.
You too, Cody. Thanks.